In this video, we're going to look at the quadruped rockback, which is a great motor control exercise to help us train the squat pattern in a position that we would call gravity eliminated. Now, we know we can't eliminate gravity, but what we're going to do is bring ourselves into a position where it's easier to kind of move through the squat pattern and train this disassociation between the hips and the spine that we talked about. Because when we squat, we're trying to get hip flexion, but we're not trying to move the spine. So what we're going to do is we're going to come onto all fours like this. So most important thing here, we want to keep in mind that hip position we found when we did our test on the floor, our modified hip scour. So I'm someone who likes to squat a little bit wider, so I'm going to take naturally a little bit wider of a stance here. So we're on all fours. Now, just like in our hip hinge video, we're going to start by taking a nice deep belly breath and getting the abs involved to brace the core to stabilize the spine. So what we're going to do is we're just going to rock back. We're going to push our butt to our heels, trying to keep our spine straight. So you can see here, this is about my end range, so we're not going to try to go any further. So once you reach that end range, that's it. You can try to push back and you can try and rock a little bit further just to try to own this position here. But what we don't want to do is create more range of motion by just rounding our pelvis back, because now when we squat, what we're doing is, this is what we commonly see is called the butt wink, or what's known as a posterior pelvic tilt, where our pelvis just kind of rounds back because we have no more hip flexion range of motion available. You've reached your anatomical limit for hip flexion based on the way that you're standing. So when we see that, and when we feel that, like kind of right about here, when you feel that, that's going to be the depth you're going to work to. So what you're going to do is just kind of rocking back and forth here, working through our hip flexion, keeping our abs tight, and our spine moves straight. So typically I even like a little bit wider of a stance, but I don't want to fall off the table. So I'm going to demonstrate it once more, trying to go just a little bit wider. You can bring your feet onto the table like this. But again, what we don't want to see is any excessive arching of our back, because now we've entered into what we call an anterior pelvic tilt, where we kind of bring the pelvis forward. And then when we run out of hip flexion in that anterior pelvic tilt, the only thing that has left to do is posterior pelvic tilt and pull the lumbar spine along for the ride. So that can happen with the excessive arch. It can also happen when we're neutral, but that's just how we know we've reached the maximum amount of hip flexion that our body allows for. So this drill you can kind of work through as a warm-up, or you can just work through to improve the motor control so you can stabilize the spine, disassociating the movement between the hips and the spine, so where we get hip flexion only, we're not moving the spine and we're not getting that posterior pelvic tilt or that butt wink. And it's a good way to just practice on keeping the abs tight, working through the squat in a regressed position. So that's our quadruped rockback.